Well, we're inside today because of the rain. We're confined to the house. Basically, it has been completely lousy for the last 5 days, a massive drop in temperature. And there's a lot of honey on the hives that was in nectar that the bees will be now eating a lot of it. So that's probably a good thing, 'cause I've got plenty of stores because they're going to need it. The colonies are huge, and with this cold weather they'll be tucking into it quite nicely, which is probably a good thing because it'll probably free up the brood nest a bit. But a good time to go through some of my cell building stuff. So what I'm doing here, I'm just literally checking through the frames. I've been adjusting a few. The way I do mine is I use the Nico cell cups. I use the brown Nico grafting kit, but I use the brown Nico fixations that fixes the, I don't know if the light's very good there, that fixes the, takes this cup holder, that's the cup obviously, that goes on the base, and then you put your grafting cup into that, which is here. But I'll show you that in a minute. So what I was going to just show you was, a lot of people ask me how I fix my brown base holders to the bar. So I put 14 on a bar, and I actually screw through the center of the cup holder into the wood. Obviously have to use really small screws, which are maximum of 20 mil long, but they're fine because they do go in quite deep. And if you use quite a wide head on them, they actually pull down the plastic of the brown cup into the bar. So I do like to use wood. I know if you go for the JZBZ, they actually make a bar that you can buy for the Langstroth Hive, the Langstroth frames, which is absolutely brilliant. But this is what I use and it works for me. You've got to use what works for you. So I'm just going through all these now. I put these in batches of 4, and then I like to put all the cups on them in the same way so I can see they're all in line. I like that. I'm just a bit anal like that. And then I go through my frames. These are the frames we use to put into the hive. Now my frames have got backing on them that's metal. And what it means is that I can put the frames in from the front when they're grafted, like this, and I know they ain't going to fall out. They ain't going to fall through the frame and go the other side. So they've all got these metal backings on, and it just speeds up everything. It just means I know that when I've finished my grafting, I can put these frames straight in the hive, and as I maneuver them or manhandle them into the hive, they don't fall through. Now a lot of people say they don't need to bother because these ends get properlised up, which is true, they do, but when you're doing a lot of grafting every day, I just find it gives me that bit of leeway, you know? So this time I'm just going through a few things and sorting a few things out. I would have been grafting today, and my cell builder is stocked. It's good. It's 13 days now since it was stocked. It's absolutely bursting. I've got to be in there straight away tomorrow morning if I can, before it even thinks about swarming, because there's going to be queen cells in it, I know. And if the weather goes good tomorrow, which is supposed to have a transition between 12 degrees today and 18 tomorrow, there's a good chance it'll go if I don't get in there. But by tomorrow comes, I'll be organised. So these are the cell cups I use, obviously the Nico cell cups. I buy these in a bag of 1,000. We have a company called Le Rouge Apiculture, which is right up near Calais in France. But you can buy these online. I buy them in a box of 1,000. We'll probably use over 1,000 each year. And then I obviously buy, these are the grafting larvae cup holders, and they come in packs of 100. So we bought a few extra this year, because we're obviously making more frames. What I'm also doing is I'm making some frames to hold queens over. Last year you saw doing some insemination, and well, I wasn't doing insemination, Alicia was doing insemination. I had a quick go, and it's not as easy as it looks, I can tell you. But what I need to do in my part of the job was to produce lots of queens that were more than 4 days old for insemination. And the reason why we do that is because they are ripe for insemination, and their sexual reproductive parts are more able to accept inseminated semen from the drones after 5 days, I think it is, sorry, not 4 days. So basically my job is to hold over the queens. Now I found that when my queen cups were in the frame, like this, vertically, I found they held over well once I put nurse bees with them. And if you look, I've done a video last summer of me showing you the difference between the cages that contain nurse bees and the cages that didn't. So I had virgins, they were marked, I brought them out of the incubator, I marked them, I put them on these frames. There was obviously, I get 2 on each frame, so I have basically 28 that can go in a queenless colony to be held over. Now, what I'm doing now is, rather than having these vertically, I'm changing the configuration. I'm making them so that I can put them sideways, like this. There are 4 bars, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to build these later, but what it is I am convinced that the queens are happier when they are horizontal, when the cages are horizontal, because I think the queens get looked after better. They have more room to be on their own. They're more room to be looked after without being stampeded all the time by the other nurse bees. Now, obviously the nurse bees are important because they need to be there for the queen, and I proved that myself. Well, I'm sure I have, because I put nurse bees in and they all survived. And a queen that's a virgin needs nurse bees. So I was finding this, that when they're vertically, they still survive, but not as long as they did do when they were sideways on. So I'm going to make a load of frames up with queens, with cages that are sideways on, and see how that goes. But I've got to be able to hold queens over, but not just for insemination, because I do a lot of nukes, and I find that if my nukes aren't ready, I'd rather delay the introduction of the queen by a day or so, just so I can get the emergency cells cut out, and then bees are more likely to accept the queen I give them. That's what I'm finding, and that's what I'm going towards. So for this season, I've got another, well, I'll probably do another 10 bars to grafting in to give me more flexibility, and probably 5 frames with the bars sideways so I can bank queens for longer. But that's what I'm planning to do anyway, and I'll let you know how the results. But it's all a bit of fun, and it's actually quite nice to have a day when it's cloudy, so that you can get all those things put into place. I should have done a lot more work over the winter, but as we actually run out of Mini Plus frames last week, so we've hurriedly made a new batch up of those, and we've got enough now. But we had to make up frames from scratch, just from pieces of wood. So we've had to cut all that, machine it, put them together, machine it more, put the wax in, heat the wax in. So we made on 300 frames that should carry us over until we go through all the Mini Plus from last year and start sorting them and bring a next load on to be re-waxed. So it's just a continuous process, that kind of thing. But when you run out of frames when you're starting, it's a bit of a disaster, so we had to just get that done. But things are looking up. It's all basically kicking off now. We're going to be harvesting honey the end of next week, our first pull. Then I'm going to go into making nukes, and then we'll be getting ready for the summer flow. But I need a lot of queens by then, so my next thing is queens. I've got a few colonies that are queenless because they've swarmed. Not many, actually, probably maybe less than 5%, so I'm fairly happy with that. But it's still a number I need queens for because I've got to maintain them. But anyway, that's the plan at the moment. That's what we're doing. When the weather gets better, we'll be back into our bees. The annoying thing is, when you've had it so good for the last 3 weeks and suddenly it goes crashing to a load of rubbish weather, it makes you realise how vulnerable you are to the weather. But we're organised, we're ready to go. It's just a question of some decent weather now. Bye for now.